Tags from New Jersey, it's the SNL Nerds, a show where two comics from New Jersey nerd out about Saturday Night Live. I'm your co-host, Darren Patterson.
And I'm your co-host, John Trumbull.
John Trumbull, how are you, good sir? Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you and yours.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We're, it feels weird to be wishing us a Merry Christmas, even though this episode is going to come out the day after Christmas. We're recording it well before Christmas, just because of scheduling, and partly because we have a special guest today.
Yeah, we do, don't we? Yeah, I see him in the chat room right now.
Yeah, there he is.
Yeah.
And since we're closing out the original Ghostbusters movie, we decided to invite back our friend, Ghostbusters fan supreme, comedian Kevin Israel. Hey, Kevin.
What's happening, fellas? Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we wanted to have you back. I mean, it just seemed right. If we're going to do Ghostbusters 2, and we're tying it in because it's the climax of the film takes place on New Year's Eve. So we thought, what better time to do it than Christmas going into New Year's? And who better to have back than Kevin Israel?
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate being the go-to for this topic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You're like a Ghostbusters expert, the barista of Ghostbusters.
My life has achieved everything I could want to now.
You did it.
My mom would be so proud.
Yay. As John said, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about Ghostbusters 2, the sequel to the smash hit film Ghostbusters, written by Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd, directed by the late, great Ivan Reitman, came out in June of 1989, which was a pretty big month for movies that year. Like, I looked it up.
Opened like a week before Batman, I think.
Yeah. The Tim Burton's Batman came out that month. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids came out that month. Do the Right Thing. Dead Poet Society.
Wow.
Big month.
The summer of '89, man. That's just nuts how many huge movies came out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the month after that, in July, I think that's when... actually, that's another thing I've realized. This is like the third movie we've done where it takes place... Where it came out during the summer of '89, because in July, when Harry Met Sally came out, and UHF, which is two other movies we've talked about on this podcast.
Well, look at that.
How about that? So the budget of this film was between 30 and 40 mil, made 215 mil, so not too shabby, I could say.
Not too shabby. I remember seeing this back in the day. I would have been 16 going on 17. So, Darren, you would have been, what, like about 11?
Probably 12. Yeah,
12, that's right.
I don't remember seeing this in the theater. I don't think like Ghostbusters hit me until high school. Like, but this is just like junior high. This is, like a little baby Darren. So like, okay. I definitely remember seeing Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in the theaters, but I didn't see this.
Kevin, what about you? I know when we were talking about the first Ghostbusters movie, you talked about how your dad took you to see the original. And I think it was the first movie you saw in the theaters?
My sister actually took me to see it. It was, I think it was right around my birthday. Was the first one. I was 8. For this, I must have been 13.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be honest, I don't remember if I saw this in the theater. I don't think I did.
Really?
I don't remember having that experience.
But you're the Ghostbusters aficionado.
I know, and it's so weird that I hadn't thought about this before, but I don't remember when I saw this for the first time.
Wow,
it's really strange. I want, and I will give this all the caveat that I have a terrible memory.
Okay.
So I very well could have been in line the opening night and seen it, and
it's
just been blanked from my memory. But I know I actually don't remember. I don't remember like a first experience with this movie like I do the original.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I mean, this movie, I think part of what hurts this movie is it repeats a lot of the stuff from the original, and almost beat for beat sometimes in the plot,
Yeah, there are a few things where it's like, oh, they kind of did that in the first one, and the blah blah blah. Like like in the big scene at the end when they go visit the mayor, Lenny.
Oh yeah,
and like it's them berating, Lenny's or the mayor's like subordinate, the same way they did with Walter Peck. But The guy here isn't as formidable an opponent as Walter Peck is. So it's still
No, he's no.
it's
He's.
fun to
I
enjoy.
mean, Kurt Fuller, great character actor, and I've liked him in a lot of other stuff. But he's no William Atherton.
Yes. Who? Oh,
And,
who is?
and Kevin, do you know why William Atherton didn't do the sequel? Because it seems weird.
I I I don't actually. I would almost guess that they probably didn't want him back.
Really,
I would
just
think that they probably wanted a new lackey to be that
maybe.
character.
But
I don't know how you want to go through this because I have so many thoughts about this movie.
well, I think we can just do like a freewheeling discussion. I think Ghostbusters 2 is so familiar to people that I don't think we have to go through it plot by plot point. I kind of gave up taking notes halfway through my rewatch. um,
Um, I'm not gonna. I didn't even do the recent rewatch because I just recently saw it
right.
just on
Okay.
my own. Um, so if you don't mind, I'll give you a few of my thoughts.
Oh, please.
So, yeah, and you already started to say it, John. If this movie was a standalone and there was no Ghostbusters 83,
84.
84, uh, this would have been a great movie.
Uh huh.
This would have been, a real standout of a movie. The problem is the original Ghostbusters exists, and it was an incredible movie.
Yeah.
The tone of this movie, and I can never quite explain, and I know I'm going to stumble around trying to make the point. All I can say is this movie has a very 90s feel to it.
Uh
Even
huh.
though I know it was 89, but it had a very early 90s movie feel to it. The look, just the tone, the jokes all felt very sitcom-y,
Mm-hmm.
and the movie itself really got away. What for me, and I discussed this, we all discussed this last time, for the original, was the great thing about the original was that it really walked the line of comedy, science fiction, and horror so well,
Mm-hmm.
and the jokes never felt like, oh well, this is a comedy jokey joke movie. Like the jokes felt very natural, very organic, very like that's how the characters would behave. Because in some comedies, when somebody like makes a joke, you're like, oh, nobody would make a joke at this moment. But
Right.
you believe that these guys, like, you believe that Peter Venkman would be cracking jokes during a very, when being attacked by a giant marshmallow man.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the sequel felt very sitcom-y. It felt very like it was leaning all the way into the comedy and away from the sci-fi horror. That really was what made Ghostbusters so great.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's part of what really hits the movie is that if you watch the two back to back, it feels like it was written by two different people.
Mm-hmm. Even
Uh,
though it is the same writing team, it was
right,
still Dan
which is
Aykroyd and Harold Ramis.
and it's bananas to me because they feel like two such different movies. Um, and my other big issue with this movie, and I mean, there's stuff I like this movie. I
Mm-hmm.
like it when it's on.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it's fine. I think it's okay. It just doesn't blow you away like the first Ghostbusters did, and that might be an unfair expectation for any sequel because when you're seeing a sequel, part of it is you want a repeat of the experience of the first movie,
Right, right.
um, and they do give us that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so I think therein kind of lies the rub, is that the movie they went the very easy, lazy way to go about it. That
Hmm.
they fell on hard times. Nobody believes in them. Boom, there are ghosts, and they're back. That
Right.
seems that seems to be the really kind of easy, lazy writing way to do it. Well, what I would have liked to see is that they were actually successful and that they get called on to like a bigger job or something that they can't handle, and
Hmm.
they come up with a bigger bad, because going from Gozer, who was made out to be this super terrifying uh, villain, to Vigo, who is a painting.
Yeah.
It's just not the same. And then they have this wonky disconnect or connection between the slime running under the secret of the ooze, if you will,
Hmm.
uh, and the paint. It was all really put together very janky. It never feels right as far as the danger, and you don't feel it never feels as ominous as Gozer and then what the original did. And
Yeah, I was kind of surprised in this rewatch that Vigo wasn't as effective as a villain as I remembered. It just didn't. He just didn't really do it for me. I mean, Peter McNichol is wonderful as Janosch.
oh,
He's
great.
great.
Oh,
I mean,
he's the standout.
he is easily the best thing in this movie, and I mean, because he's the new thing. So,
Right,
But he
right.
does a really good job at being comedic while being creepy.
mm-hmm.
And when he gets possessed by Vigo, that's a creepy moment when he's walking through her apartment, and that's all that was.
With like the laser eyes.
Yeah, with the X-ray eyes,
Yeah,
like that was all a really cool, creepy moment where you almost felt like, oh, this is Ghostbusters. Like this has that eerie feeling to it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, he was definitely kind of cool because he does walk that line where he is kind of cute and funny in some scenes, like, yeah, especially when he's hitting on Dana. But then, like you said, like those scenes where he gets possessed and his eyes light up red, and like it's like, oh wait, no, he's actually kind of like a creepy, dangerous threat here.
yeah, yeah. One of my so my going back to my big issue point with this movie with the plot. Nobody remembers the Marshmallow Man walking through the city.
yeah. They kind of write it off quickly. They say like, oh, you guys faked everything, or you used hallucinogenic gases, or something
And
like
that
that.
to me is the laziest,
Mm-hmm.
worst writing I could imagine. Because all right, it happened in 84. This is
Mm-hmm.
now 89. It wasn't that the internet and social media. Listen to me. If that had happened in the 80s, we would still be talking about it today. Like
Right.
it would be in history books. There would be classes in college talked about it. People would be going to paranormal combat school. Like this would be a whole industry. This wouldn't
You
have just been written off and like it didn't like that's crazy. Like Sully Sullenberg landed a plane in the river and we're still talking about it.
right, right,
And
and
these
we made a
guys,
movie about it where
yeah,
Tom Hanks
yeah,
played.
and you're right. And Tom Hanks starred in a movie about it. And these guys stopped the world from being destroyed. And they're just like, that was pyrotechnic. Like, what?
Yeah.
Come on.
Fake
That,
news.
yeah, right.
Those were
Exactly.
crisis ghosts.
And so that just, and that, so that almost, I think, subconsciously just steals the entire validity of the movie from me. Because I could see if that they, like, if the original Ghostbuster ended and somehow nobody realized. Like, even if it ended and, like, Vigo's last act was to make everybody forget what happened or something.
Uh huh. Uh
I
huh.
don't know. Or this all happened in secret and not in front of thousands of people staring at the base of the building, which was a terrible idea, by the way.
Yeah.
While this is all, but the news was there, the military was involved. Like they would have been, the Ghostbusters would have been taken into like by the CIA. Like there. I mean, so much else would have happened besides them just being like, yeah, sorry, you guys are out of work. This isn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just ridiculous to believe that's how this all went down, and it almost feels like they resorted to that lazy kind of writing purely so they could go back to all the gags from the original, like you said, with the mayor's office and with the hard nosed lackey who's giving them a tough time and the whole thing, and put them in the psycho ward where they can like it. It was just such a lazy attempt at a sequel, which is also why I didn't like the third installment because it felt like again like just lazy. Like let's just give them what they like and
You
just
mean Ghostbusters Afterlife, right?
Afterlife. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the only third I know of. Um,
Damn.
yeah. So yeah, there was just. But if you take all of those problems away, which it's hard
Mhm.
to do, but if you take it all away, it still to me is an enjoyable movie. There are some great moments in this movie. There's
Yeah.
some
Yeah, like I mean, one of the things I liked about this film, like I will agree with you, the whole thing where just no one remembers what they did to save the city, and they all kind of dismiss it as oh, it was fake news or whatever. That yeah, that is a little they kind of they were kind of stretching it there. I wasn't too wild about that. I did, however, like the part where they say, yeah, they went out of business because they got sued by the city and the state and everybody. That I feel like would happen. That would have
Yeah,
happened.
I do like that. I do like that sort of reality ensues thing where they're sued into oblivion in between the movies, because it does give them an arc to kind of come up from the depths again. And you got that cute scene at the beginning with Ray and Winston, and they're you think they're on a call
Yeah.
doing Ghostbusters, and it's a kid's birthday party, so you see how far they've fallen. And I love when he comes out and he's like, ungrateful yuppie larva.
Yeah.
That's a great line.
Yeah.
Who are you gonna call? He-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we get a nice little cameo from Ivan's kid, Jason Reitman.
Oh,
Yes.
right, that's right.
Yeah, who says, "My dad says you're full of crap," which perfect line for him. And Ivan Reitman's daughter, I think her name was Crystal. She's like the little girl who is handed the puppy when Egon's doing his psychological experiments. So both of his kids, or at least two of his kids, have cameos in the movie, which is nice.
Oh,
that's a great scene. The whole scene seeing them seeing what they do, seeing Peter as a cheesy TV show host. Like, I buy into that. That's definitely something you do. That whole scene with him talking to the person that thinks the world is ending, and that's all. That was funny.
Yeah.
Ray running an occult bookstore is great, and that was great that it carried over to Afterlife.
Yes.
Yeah. I liked how that one woman that Peter had on his show said the world was going to end on Valentine's Day 2016. Like, part of me was like, she was close.
She was close, not far off. She's off by like 6 months.
Only you knew.
She met up with that alien at the Paramus Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny. I'll give it that.
I mean, there is a lot of funny stuff, and it's even the scenes with Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver kind of falling back in love. Those have a charm to them, I think, because those two have a real chemistry together.
Yeah, they did, or they do, and the scenes with the baby with Venkman and the baby were really cute.
Mm-hmm.
I love the joke. Can you put him down? And he goes, well, your eyes are kind of far apart, blah blah blah, and you're a terrible burden on your mother. It took me years to get that joke.
Yeah.
I did not get that the first time I heard it. Like, it took me a while to be like, oh, I see what he did.
I do that to my baby now all the time.
Well, you're bringing him up right.
Yeah, of course. He already has a Ghostbusters sweatshirt.
Oh, well, of course.
But in a way though, like Sigourney Weaver's Dana Barrett's character went through a lot in the original Ghostbusters.
Okay. Yeah, this is the thing that bugs me. Like, people writing off the events of the first movie bugs you. She's a concert cellist in the first movie, and she's an art restorer in this one. I'm like, both of those are occupations where it takes literally years to learn the skills involved and get anywhere.
That's a great point.
And I'm just like, and then Louis Tully goes from an accountant to a tax attorney, which, okay, I guess that's plausible. They say he went to night school and got his law degree. I don't know why he did that. But they have some really weird career trajectories in the Ghostbusters universe. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, so as a once lawyer, the entire the act of his in that scene is ridiculous. And you could make fun of, like, look, my cousin Vinny does the greatest job ever of representing a trial while making it funny. And it still respects some of, like, that there's actual procedure and you have to say and do certain things and the judge will not allow certain things. In this movie, it's just like, it's Rick Moranis. Let him say what he wants. Like, it's just like, okay, he went to night school, but you still learn in night school. Like, it's not like you're going to a Cracker Jack box and just getting a law degree. You're still going to school. Like, he's still going to know something. And I don't like, clearly Louis Tully was an awkward, weird guy in the first movie. Like, he was clearly, like, socially awkward, but he wasn't a moron. He wasn't an idiot.
Yeah.
And he must have been pretty good at his job because he had all those clients there and he knew what he was talking about. And when the couple comes in and he's like, oh, Dan has a receivership and blah 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 blah. The whole
Yeah. So they're
like
okay.
he knows everything about these clients. So he's clearly good at his job and bad with people. But now they're just like, he's just a moron.
Uh-huh.
And I hate they did that with in another movie, in a very, very different comedy series, which I always like to call the Stifler effect. If
Oh
you
yeah.
if you ever watch all of the American Pies back to back, which I don't know why
I
you
mean,
do
which I do on a weekly basis.
it. Stifler goes from being this like bonehead jock asshole to a complete moron in
Hmm.
the American Wedding. Like his character completely changes, and he goes from kind of being a douchebag to like mentally disabled.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I feel
And
like they did the same thing with like Joey from Friends. Like in the big early,
yes,
I used to watch Friends a lot back in the day, and like in the early days, he was dopey, but he wasn't a total dum
He had
dum.
street smarts.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
had street smarts, but then like towards the end of the series, they made him like just almost like a drooling fool.
right.
It was
Well, because
really
it's the
weird.
same thing. It's like, well, what do they like? What do they like about? He's a moron. Let's just keep making him a bigger moron.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and it's
Because
sort of the
stupidity's a bottomless well, comedically. I
right.
mean,
And it's
yeah.
the same thing with Lewis Tully. They were like, let's just make him like as goofy and doofy as possible. And that's what they did. And that's what that whole, his whole thing. And then when he dresses up as the Ghostbuster and puts on the outfit, uh,
Hmm.
it was just like that wasn't who that character was really.
Yeah,
And it's definitely picking nits, but it just
Yeah.
shows like how in this movie they decided to lean really hard into everything that worked in the first one.
Yes.
yeah. Like I also feel the same way about Janine Melnitz too, because they
Yep.
really switched up her character too. Because like in the first one, she was kind of, I guess, dowdy would be the word, like a secretary. But like in this one, they like kind of sexied her up and like kind of made her like Cyndi Lauper,
Yeah.
almost. It was like a
Yeah.
total 180 with her
I
character.
think they were influenced a bit by the cartoon because, like, we had the real Ghostbusters cartoon between the original movie and this one, and it was a definite influence on Ghostbusters 2, from what I understand. I mean, that's why they're like they're not really smoking. There aren't as many sex jokes. I mean, there's nothing
Yep.
like the ghost BJ scene in this one.
You know.
Um, and so it's pretty clearly a PG because they wanted to hang on to that kid audience that the first movie got and that the cartoon had expanded on.
Yeah, that makes sense. They definitely cartooned it up.
Oh
Hmm.
I
yeah.
feel like.
Oh yeah, it definitely has that wacky cartoon-esque feel to it.
Yeah,
Um,
I felt like the courtroom scene kind of felt that way too. Like once the Scolari brothers pop out of the slime and run all over the place, it seemed pretty like they were definitely leaning into the zany in that scene. I thought.
Yeah,
yeah, you know what? I mean, I kind of liked the court scene. It didn't bother me too. I mean, they looked a little ridiculous. Like the special effects didn't look great.
yeah.
It
I
didn't
think it
look
was
as
the B team from ILM
yeah,
working on this movie because I believe their A team was working on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which also came out in the summer of '89. And
Dang.
I know this because that's why Star Trek V has really bad special effects was because ILM's top two tier teams were booked up with between Last Crusade and Ghostbusters 2.
Oh wow. Oh, Star
So,
Trek Five came out this month of June 1989 too. I think. Right.
and that's
Damn.
why the effects suck because they went with this small town guy, and it didn't work out too well.
Oh boy.
But,
yeah. And you know what? And that goes to sort of one of my other like points about the movie that I've never been able to really capture in describing is that the looks of the two movies are very different. Just
mm,
I don't know if it's the film that they were filmed on or the cameras, but the original movie has that kind of grainy look of that movies had back then
yeah.
that made the whole movie look more serious and it gave it that I don't know, it just gave it a feeling of more gravitas. I don't know.
Well,
I
it
can
seemed
never
more real
explain it.
world in the
Yes.
look. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Where the 89 movie, the sequel, looks like that's why I say it has that 90s feel. It looks like a sitcom. It has that much brighter, much a lot more close-up shots.
Yeah.
Very, very,
Flatter lighting.
yeah, 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 totally. Like it looks like all the scenes were blocked, so everybody was like, closer together. It it just has a very different feel to it. It feels like you're not watching as much of a movie as you are almost a sitcom, and I think
Hmm.
that takes away from some of the, the horror aspect. If there was one in the original.
Well,
Um,
I can see that. I mean, part of the beauty of the first movie is the way it just builds and it just leads you bit by bit into this supernatural world until it escalates until finally we have this the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man walking through the streets of Manhattan. And this one, we don't have that quite so much because we know from the first movie that ghosts are real in this world. So yeah, so it meanders a lot more than the first movie. I think it doesn't really build the way the first one did, which is something I kind of missed.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it goes as far as the plot goes. It goes back to the like it felt like they had two ideas. Like, what if there was, New York is such a hateful place. What if there was this energy flowing under the city that was
Right,
infected by how miserable people are? Oh, and what about if there was a painting that was haunted?
right.
Yeah,
Well, how are we going to combine the two? Don't worry. Like, there's never really any explanation for what the connection between the two is.
exact.
No, it's
Yeah,
very vague.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
very vague on it. Like I never understood what it was. I did like the fact that when they were investigating, like where the pulse was coming from, like when they first go to Dana's apartment, they find out like it's coming from the sidewalk, the street. They decide to just dig up the street and drill a hole in the middle without asking for any permits or any permission. It just that's I don't know that I got a kick out of that. It's like you could have just I don't know, go to a manhole and and gone down there.
Yeah, I did like the nod though to the fact that like the city is such a mess that you could start drilling a hole in the middle of the street, and it would take a while for anybody to
Yeah,
ask a question.
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Who told you to
Um,
stop cutting?
in
I
fact,
mean,
in fact, the real fiction of that is probably that like the cops ever caught on to it.
yeah, yeah,
uh,
that's true.
but yeah, I mean the river of slime thing. Like I mean I looked it up. It seems like it was an idea that Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd have about, like you said, like what would happen if like all the negative energy in the city was kind of channeled in this way, and I guess they wanted to make it like a metaphor for the bad feeling that's going on in the inner city and issues. And like I think they like the idea of what would happen if the entire city of New York had to be nice to each other or face annihilation. Like it like there was something in that idea that they really like to play with, I think, from what I read. Which is interesting, but I don't know if they
It is, and it would have probably been good as an entire movie.
yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
didn't without the Vigo. That I mean, it almost could have been two different movies. Um, Although the idea of like a haunted painting isn't very interesting, and the way the movie ends is very messy. It's
Hmm.
it's like, well, we need to have something huge walk through the city, but let's make it a good guy this time.
Right.
And so it's the Statue of Liberty, which is
Right.
insane. And it almost feels like they could have done so much more with that than what they did.
Hmm.
Because really, in the end, they had her walk through, and then she just slams into the slime wall. And supposedly the Statue of Liberty walking through the streets of New York gives everybody this like rush of good feelings where they all it's enough energy to weaken the wall of slime or whatever. And it's like, if could you imagine the terror if people saw the Statue of Liberty walking through the city? Nobody's gonna be like, yeah, New York, what a place.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
I kind of like that. I think I like what they're going for there. Is that it gathers everybody's good feelings. I mean, I think that works for me. I don't like that it is a little too repetitive from the first movie. Where yeah, I'm sure they said at some point we have to have some equivalent of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from the first movie, and let's. So it is a little too repetitive that they have yet another giant thing walking through Manhattan. So yeah.
And when you think about like that, like they just kept trying to make that like the huge ghost keeps being a thing in all the movies.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just the ending of the movie is a bit of a letdown from where you were going. Because again,
Yeah.
there are like the scene in the train tunnel. I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
And even the scene of him going to get the slime, like and seeing the river of slime, although the special effects were awful. Just the idea of being, trapped there, and he's, that was an interesting kind of cool idea. Like, and I mean, the amount of movies that have the trope of there's something under the city that people don't know about because the city's so old and it's been built over so many times. Like, but it works in this, and the whole thing that Vigo wants, but of course Vigo wants Dana's kid, like of all the women in the city.
They don't really explain that either. Yeah, like why is it that it's Dana and her son Oscar that are mixed up in all this? It just is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think it was because Vigo first possessed Janosch, and Janosch was like, "Oh, I know where I can get a baby," and he just
Yeah.
went with Dana's kid because he was just so obsessed with
Yeah,
her.
and because Janosch wanted to be with Dana, so
Yeah,
he was getting something out of this bargain too.
True.
Um,
Yeah, he really is like the Lewis Tully of this movie.
yeah, right, right.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, I guess so. Wow, I didn't even think of that. Holy moly!
Yeah.
that was incredibly deep, John.
Well, okay. I full disclosure, I watched the honest trailers on Ghostbusters 2 just before we
Uh,
started recording, and they made that point. I was like, "Yep, I see that. I see that." So that is not an
Cheater.
observation that is original to me. Um, but I did read that. I remember reading in like Starlog magazine back in the day that Peter McNichol, when he got the part of Janosch, he was the one who came up with the accent. Um, it was he was originally just called Jason, and he was just kind of a bland villain. And so Peter McNichol really created that character. And he said that what he wanted to do was he wanted to have like a Beatles haircut
mm,
to kind of imply that the Beatles had just come to Carpathia. That's how behind the times they were.
okay.
Um, but that idea was vetoed because they said like, oh well, we've got 4 guys in this movie who all have dark hair, so you can't have dark hair too. So
That'll
he
that'll
got
conf-
that little uh, eraser head look.
uh they don't want to confuse the audience.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's like, oh, who is that? Peter McNichol or Ernie Hudson? I can't tell the difference.
Well, I mean, who can? Who can?
Okay. Oh wow. All right. I also like there was like a good number of cameos in this film. I saw Philip Baker Hall really quickly in that one scene. Cheech
Yeah.
Marin, Ben Stein,
Yes.
and of
Yep.
course, who could forget the iconic acting debut of one Bobby Brown as the like the bellhop.
Yeah. He's like a doorman at Gracie Mansion.
Yeah,
How did
yeah.
you how did you leave out Cheech Marin?
I said Cheech Marin,
Oh,
didn't
you
I?
did. Oh, sorry.
He did. Yeah. Yeah. Cheech Marin. He's when the Titanic is docking.
Better late than never.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a good line.
It's a
That's a good
great line.
line.
It's a
I
great
think
line.
it's a gag that they cut from the first movie, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah.
But what do you think of the new Bobby Brown song, the theme song?
Oh, terrible.
Ah,
Yeah,
I
not good.
Not good.
look as somebody. I like it. I'll say it. I
Okay.
liked it then. I like it now. I don't. Maybe I just like cheesy Bobby Brown '90s dance.
I mean, it's catchy, but it's not. It's not the. I mean, you can't really write a theme as good as the original Ray Parker Jr. Ghostbusters, but
Right.
yeah, this is not on the same level.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying it's Ray Parker Jr. level because that's just top tier. That's top shelf. That's the Grey Goose in my
Right.
mind. But it is.
Great goose.
Yeah, it is. It's the Grey Goose of songs. But yeah, I mean, to me, that on our own, it'll always get my toe tapping. I mean, maybe it's mostly nostalgia for me, but like,
Hmm.
I don't know. I think that shit slaps, son, as the kids say.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
I
As the
think that's
kids say.
that's the only time that's been said about that.
Yep. Yep. This is it.
There was one line when they're meeting with the mayor towards the end where Aykroyd says, And I'd like you to know that almost 50% of us voted for you in the last election, which I didn't really remember that line, but I was like, that's really good because there are 4 guys
Yeah.
and almost 50%. So that either means that only one of them voted for the mayor or one didn't vote and one out of the remaining 3 voted. So it was 33%. Either way, very clever line.
That's right.
That was a great line. That was a great line. But it's also, and we sort of covered this already, but the whole mayor scene, it was
Yeah.
just such a rehash, and
Yeah.
it was the same mayor, and like they could have done at least changed something up. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and had a new mayor who was like, "Oh yeah, I heard about you guys," or something.
Mm-hmm.
Just something. But it just amazes me that with those guys writing and how good they are, and how funny they are, and how aware they are, they just decided to just go back to the well. And maybe it was the studio. Maybe the studio said,
Well, I read some studio backstory on this, and part of the reason it took 5 years for them to do the sequel was one, Bill Murray took a hiatus from films after The Razor's Edge bombed, because he only agreed to do the first Ghostbusters if they would finance The Razor's Edge, which was like his big dramatic debut, and that didn't do well. And then he retired, kept away from films until he did Scrooge the year before this. And he was also pissed off because Columbia had been taken over by this guy David Putnam, who was much more of an artsy kind of guy. He liked a lot of foreign films and stuff like that, and he said at a luncheon, the British American Chamber of Commerce luncheon, he called Bill Murray an actor who makes millions off movies but gives nothing back to his art.
Oh.
And he just resented blockbuster films in general. So he was not he was not a real Ghostbusters booster, but he was fired in the fall of 87, and then his replacement was Don Steele, who made a Ghostbuster sequel a priority. But I mean, just reading that, where it's just like, hey, yeah, star of our movie, our potential sequel, you suck.
That's not. Those aren't things you want to say to people.
Yeah, or about people. I mean,
and I think it also is worth just considering that in '89, sequels and franchises weren't what they are today.
True.
And I mean, and almost to the detriment of movies today. Almost every movie is made with the idea of, "Ooh, can I turn this into a franchise?" Literally,
Mm-hmm.
there's not a movie made that's not like an art house movie that isn't somehow considered like, how can I get more blood out of this stone?
Right. Right. Especially in the age of like Marvel movies, where everybody wants to have like the big internet connected universe.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that, but then there's also, it's okay to make one good movie and just walk
Mm-hmm.
away.
Yeah.
Like I think of the Joker. Like, I liked the Joker, and I would have been good if they were like, that's it. That's, when Joaquin Phoenix said, "I'm not making another," I was like, great. That was awesome, because that movie was a great experience, and I'm good. But then when they announced the sequel, like, part of me is like, oh, cool, we get to see more. And then the part of me that actually liked the first movie was like, but they're gonna ruin it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's the problem with sequels, and especially if you weren't planning on making it into a franchise and you didn't have that kind of vision, which at the time they made the first Ghostbusters, I don't know that it was an idea that, like, hey, we could probably make another one of these.
No, I don't think so. There was a good article on Cracked that I just looked up again, which just made the point that, yeah, they weren't really planning a sequel. And like, the appeal of Ghostbusters, it isn't necessarily the world of Ghostbusters or the mythology of Ghostbusters. It's because we had Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis all at their comedic peaks. And, that's the appeal of it. The premise and the supernatural stuff, that's just kind of icing on the cake.
Right. But the truth is that and again, this just goes back to my fanboyness of the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
They still did it so well. They did all that stuff that they almost didn't have to do that well, so well.
Mm-hmm.
Making it feel like all of this was the whole lore behind Gozer, and the gatekeeper and the keymaster and the building and everything that went into it. They made it feel like almost, there were people who actually went and like looked it up, like they believe, like they were like, oh, this must have been based off of something. Like they did such a good job with all of that.
Right, right.
And then this version in the sequel, at no point was I like, oh, I bet Vigo was a real person. That I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, it was ridiculous. Like, obviously, he was a made up character. It's just the writing just felt so lazy, and I think that goes back to the point that I was horribly stumbling around, is that sequels are hard,
Yes.
especially when you don't have a plan for a sequel when you're writing the first one. That and they, and it's almost like like your sophomore album.
Mm.
You've been spending, and look, as a comic, we've all done stand up comedy here. You spend so long. Like I recorded my first album after I'd been doing comedy for 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
and the hour and whatever minutes, however many long it was, all that material was built up over those 15 years,
Wow.
Right.
better or worse. So then, if I was to have made it, and somebody was like, "Oh, right, we want to pick you up. We're gonna need another album out of you in 12 months." There's no way that album would have been as good.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I mean, maybe it would have, because I would be sort of getting stage time everywhere, and it might have been a little easier. But and that's the same thing with the sophomore album. Like these bands spend all these years making these albums, this first album, and then the studio's like, "All right, we need another album in 6 months."
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing with a movie like this. Like these guys were writing this movie and they building up their chemistry over the years of all the different projects they worked on together. And then it was just like, all right, we need another one. It's like, well, we kind of blew our load on the first one.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you want out of the second one? Like, come on. And the studio is just like, well, give us the same thing again. All
Yeah.
right.
Well, and that's the tricky thing is, like, in a sequel, you have to some degree repeat the first movie, but you also have to introduce enough new elements to make it an interesting viewing experience in its own right, and that is very tricky, because if you do too much, if it's too much like the first one, it's not great, and if it's too different, it's not great. You really have to hit it right down the middle, and it's tough.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think with the first one, we keep saying, or we keep saying, like with the first Ghostbusters movie, like they really caught lightning in a bottle, where just everything was just perfect. They had the right balance of, comedy and horror and sci-fi ness, and they had never been really able to like sort of replicate that same formula. Because like if you look in all the other Ghostbusters movies that's come out since, they haven't hit quite the same. And yeah, I mean, I would say the same thing for this one too. Like, I like this movie again. Like, we should probably at some point talk about what we did like about this film. But yeah, it doesn't quite hit the same notes as the first one did, because like as you said, it is hard to do a sequel and just repeat that same magic you did the first time around.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what? And on the heels of all of that, I'll say this, that they had a very successful cartoon franchise.
Yeah.
Which to date is one of my favorite cartoon series. I remember as a kid watching it and not even realizing how much I loved the show.
Mm-hmm.
And they had some really, really good episodes, and some of them were pretty dark. And I was a Transformer, G.I. Joe, He-Man kid growing up, but I watched Ghostbusters really, and I don't think I was ever like one of those that I would have like listed on my favorite cartoons, but I never missed an episode, and
Right.
I loved that show, and I could probably tell you more of those episodes than I could of any of the other cartoons that I watched.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't like they're, and I'm not saying they should have based a movie off of an episode of a cartoon, but it wasn't like there wasn't story out there for them to pull from, and or at least just general concepts and ideas.
Right. Right.
There was one cartoon episode where there was like a haunted house, and the house was like actually like alive, and I think it was killing the people that would live in it, and they went in and like it brainwashed them and made them think they were actually living in the house. I can't remember, but it was really creepy. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end, they finally ended up destroying the house. Like,
Wow.
now as a cartoon, they did it in a way that wasn't so violent or gory or whatever. But when you really sit down and think about what was going on behind the scenes, you're like, oh, that was probably pretty messed up.
Right.
Like people definitely died, and they definitely killed some supernatural entity. But like something like that, they could have turned that into like it didn't have to be, and maybe that's where they stumbled, is that they went the exact same route. Well, it's got to be this, and a lot of the movies do that. You see the same thing in like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like
Hmm.
each time the threat has to be as big or bigger. Like
Right.
why not? Well, why not just make it smaller? Why not make
Hmm.
a movie about one bust that they had to go on? That's a challenge or that's especially dangerous. Like it doesn't have to
Right.
be global consequences. It could just be them in a day of their lives doing their what's now just their job. But to Darren's point, I do, and all of that said, I still do like it. Look, they're great characters. They still work
Yeah.
great together. There was
Hmm.
no there was no point where I was like, oh, they're like being forced to deal with each other. Like they all had great chemistry. They assumed their character roles perfectly, and I enjoyed you and this goes to almost my point in any type of story that I'll get involved in, whether it's a book or a movie or a TV show or anything. If you give me great characters, I will watch those characters make spaghetti.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
True.
know,
True. I mean,
like
even like the scene where they're testing out the mood slime in the toaster.
oh,
That's
fantastic.
fun 'cause yeah, it's great, and because it's getting exposition across about how the mood slime operates, but you also have uh, Venkman teasing Egon about you're not sleeping with it, are you? And then he just goes, "You hound!" It's always the quiet ones. That's fun because they inject a lot of character in there, and you really remember that exposition because it's a good character scene too.
Yeah. Oh, it's great, and they're and you get the feeling that they really like each other, and they have
Hmm.
history, and that
Mm.
they're
Yes.
like a lot of movies when they introduce a bunch of characters, and they have to go, well, we've been together since high school. It's like they said that because you didn't believe that they've known each other forever. These guys, you believe they've known each other forever, and
Yeah.
it really it just goes to show how far characters go. Look, Nolan movies, some of them are great, some of them aren't. Nolan is outside of Heath Ledger's Joker. I don't think in one Nolan movie was there a character that I was ever really invested in.
Right.
And he's made some great movies.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I would never care about seeing any of those characters do anything again other than Heath Ledger's Joker. These guys, I could literally watch them, probably like meet with their accountant or their,
Mhm.
or like,
Hmm.
to sit around and, deal with their family. Like they're just great characters. Um, and it's just so entertaining to watch them that I'm able to gloss over all the bruises in this movie in favor of the characters.
Yeah, that's true. It is. I mean, I guess bottom line, it is fun to just spend another hour and a half, 2 hours with these characters because they are fun and funny and charismatic. And yeah, maybe a lot of the jokes don't hit quite as hard as the first one, but there's enough in there that I think it's worth seeing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. What you said throughout this episode. They do hit this familiar beats. They do need that same big bad threat like they had in the first one. Instead of Gozer, it's Vigo. But even though like Vigo isn't as he doesn't see him as imposing and threatening as Gozer was, and they do follow the same beats that they did in the first movie, but also at the same time, like the characters still have great chemistry. They're still like really good with each other. The beats are still there, and it's just good to see them in the movie. Like they carry over like the issues that any issue that I would have with this movie.
And one of the one of the other like fan service nods was
Hmm.
when Lewis Tully goes to get on the bus and Slimer's there,
Yeah.
and it's like fine, like because Slimer became a big part of the cartoon,
Right.
and they knew the fans liked Slimer, and so
Hmm.
there he was. But it was like, where did he come from, and why?
Yeah. Apparently, there was supposed to be like this whole subplot between Lewis and Slimer, with Lewis, like, I think, trying to capture Slimer in the Ghostbusters firehouse.
Firehouse, yeah, I'd heard that at some point too, that Slimer was haunting the firehouse.
Yeah, but they cut that down, or they cut most of that out, and they also had some reshoots on the movie like just a couple months before it was released. So it was obviously a more troubled production than the first one,
Yeah.
and it was shot a lot faster. I was reading that the first one was shot over like 13 months, and they didn't have anything like that in this one. But 13 months, that seems like a ton of time to shoot a movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Just to shoot the movie? Absolutely.
I mean, maybe that was including the special effects work, which makes more sense to me. But anyway,
okay.
Yeah, but there was a lot of fan service in the movie, and it clearly it worked because people, I'm sure when that door opened and Slimer was there, people were like, "Oh my God, it's him from another movie." Very very excited about it, but at the same time, it just kind of goes back to that, like, they just they just dug back into the well of like what worked.
Yeah.
Very true, very true.
So I kind of wish that it had been a little more different from the first movie, but I do feel at the same time this movie is a little overhated.
100%. Absolutely.
I mean, I think people are too hard on it just because it isn't the instant comedy classic that the first one was.
Yeah.
That's an almost impossible bar to clear,
Well, that's the thing. I don't think it should be hated, but in that the first movie is so beloved that if you're going to say about this movie that it's just okay, it's it's good enough. And I personally think it's better than good enough, but it's not the first movie. So if it's not the first movie, then it's bad. Like that's your two options. You're either as good as the first or you're terrible, which is an impossible standard.
Yeah, sad but true. Sad but true.
And you're absolutely right. I think if people actually sat down and gave this movie its fair shake, they'd say it's okay. It's okay. I laughed. I enjoyed it. I didn't hate my time I spent watching this movie. I don't regret watching it like a certain other version of this movie that I watched. Like I don't actively avoid it like that version.
Right. And you weren't too nuts about Afterlife either, as I recall.
No.
Yeah.
I was not. But I didn't hate that movie either. I just was disappointed because it could have been so much better.
Right.
Whereas this one, I think it goes in order of release. The first one was the best, the second one, and then the third one. The second one was definitely better than Afterlife. Because Afterlife, they didn't even try to have like a different, like there wasn't even really a plot in Afterlife. It was just a bunch of, here's some stuff you remember. You're old now, but remember how cool it was to be a kid? And they just kept throwing it at us, and we were like, okay, I'll keep eating what you're throwing at me.
Yeah.
I feel like Afterlife at least tried to change it up a little bit because it's like mostly taking place outside of New York.
And John, that's all. Yeah, John, you fell for it. You're a sucker. They said, oh, you know what? If we take it out of New York but do all the same shit, everyone will be like, this is a different movie. John, you fell for it.
Dummy.
I thought you were better than that.
Kevin Israel, Ghostbusters truther.
Wow.
I say it because I love.
I get it. Well, Kevin, thanks so much for doing this and walking through Ghostbusters 2 with us. It was a fun. It's always fun talking movies with you. And,
I appreciate it, and
we had a good time.
I do adore you guys, and I love the topic. And hopefully they make some more of these movies so I can come back and talk about how much I hate them.
All right.
Well, I mean, they are making a sequel to Afterlife, so
we'll have you on.
I look forward to it.
So
is there anything you'd like to plug? Anything you want to promote, Kev?
You can just go to my website, kevinisrael.com, for upcoming dates. My album, The Struggle is Real, is available on iTunes and everywhere that you get streaming music. And yeah, just check me out on social media, Kevin Israel, wherever you poke around on the social platforms.
Yeah, and Israel spelled like the country.
Yes, like the country.
Yes.
Shockingly.
So,
awesome.
All right. Well, I think that's our show for the week. Thanks again to Kevin Israel. And you can follow us on the social media. We're at SNL Nerd Show on Twitter. Because I think Twitter is still a thing right now. We're recording this several days in advance. Who knows what's going to happen? You can also follow our individual pages. I'm at Trumbull Comic, TRUMBULL, and the word comic.
And I'm at Darren Credible. That's DARI Incredible, Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah. So, And then next week, we're going to be back with more SNL Nerds. Saturday Night Live is still off, but we're going to cover another movie starring an SNL alum, as is our style. And since it's a little topical, we're going to do a Sherlock Holmes movie. We're going to do Holmes and Watson, starring Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, which, from what I hear, not good.
Oh boy.
So, yeah. That's going to be interesting to talk about because I'm a real Sherlock Holmes fan. January 6th is generally regarded as Sherlock Holmes' birthday. And so that's our little tie-in for this. So, yeah, we're going to go through this and see how bad it is, and I can talk about how accurate it is to the Sherlock Holmes canon. And I'm looking forward to that.
I'm bracing myself for that.
Yes. Yeah, so we will see. We will see. It probably won't be as good as Ghostbusters 2, obviously. So that's going to be it for us this time around. We will see you next time. Until then, Nerds out!
This has been a non-productive media presentation. Executive producer, Frank Hablawi. This program and many others like it on the Non-Productive Network is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Please share it, but ask before trying to change it or sell it. For more information, visit non-productive.com.